Hey, welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Male Gynecologist. This month, I have four special guests. Every week, I'm going to run an interview with one of my children. And obviously, the first week, we have the firstborn child who is going to be these are going to probably air in December, and you are going to turn 30 in December. My daughter, Hannah Tassone, who also now goes by Hannah Lewis. And she's already told me that there aren't really any questions that are off the table. So for those of you that feel like I'm putting her on the spot, piss off, because I'm not. I wouldn't do that to my kids. She asked me if she could swear because my first and my third child swear all the time. So we'll get the full benefit of her dialect and her job and her life, because she's only 30 almost, but she's already lived a pretty full life.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning. Hannah was born in Papillion, Nebraska on December 10th. I was in medical school at the time. You were born in 1993. It was my third year of medical school. And kind of really, will disclose that I was a member at that time of the Mormon Church, which I find now very hard to believe, but I did that. And Hannah was born into a household, very loving household. We lived in an apartment. But then, we moved to, I did my residency in Oklahoma. So Hannah was a young girl in Oklahoma until she was probably, let's see, five-ish.
Yeah.
And my mom, her mom and myself, we divorced when she was very young. So let's kind of start with, what are your earliest memories? Do you remember Oklahoma?
Yeah, I remember Oklahoma. I don't have any memories of you and mom ever being together.
Right.
All my memories kind of start like after the divorce. Like I remember the first time I met Katie and I remember the first time I met Stan, but I don't really have any memories really before that. So I remember the house we lived in Edmond, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember the house we lived in Chickasha, and I
Yeah.
remember Katie's house in Lawton for some reason
That was
with
my
Mr.
house.
Phipps.
When I
Oh,
lived,
sorry.
when I graduated from residency in '98, I had to spend 4 years in Lawton because I had a military payback. So
Hmm.
the Chickasha house was our house together. The Lawton
Mm.
location. It's really interesting to kind of look at what people remember,
But
and
yeah,
how they remember.
those are my earliest ones for sure.
And then, so looking at that, your mom and I dated in high school, and
Hmm.
then she went on a mission to Puerto Rico when I was a medical student. And basically, what happened was the Mormon Church kind of ran its course for me. And now that you're an
Hmm.
adult, you could probably understand part of that.
Oh, yeah.
And the relationship kind of fizzled when the church fizzled. And I had always grown up in a family that was divorced. My parents divorced when I was 5, and it was super traumatic because I had to move away from my dad. Um, I didn't want to. I was a fifth grader, and you had a very similar thing. It's really weird
Hmm.
how life repeats itself. I grew up saying that I was never going to get divorced because my parents were divorced, and I just knew. I knew I was never going to get divorced, and there I was divorcing, and then she moved you from Oklahoma to
Hmm.
Arizona. And
Yeah.
I was just completely devastated because life's repeating itself, right? And I fought it, but obviously the courts didn't care because your mom was, she was the mom, and
Hmm.
um and Stan, your stepdad, had this great job opportunity in Tucson. So do you remember that part about moving, and the what that felt like? And
The only thing that I really remember about that was, I don't know why, but I have this like really vivid memory of being in the house in Edmond and being on the phone with you.
Mhm.
And keep in mind, I was like 4,
Yeah.
and I'm like standing in front of like a full body length mirror, and I was
Mhm.
like crying about how I did not want to move
Yeah.
to Tucson. But that's really, I remember like a little bit of the drive there because I had to drive with Stan in his Ford Taurus that had no air
Yeah.
conditioning. So I remember that. But I don't really like really remember any. I'm probably like subconsciously blocked it out, honestly. But no, I don't really
Yeah.
remember a lot. I remember being upset and like not wanting to do it. And like I remember the first day of kindergarten being really rough, but I don't really have a lot of the like negative memories, you know.
So here's what's fascinating. I had a very similar, I mean, so I've never really even heard this part, but my life was almost exactly the same when I didn't want to move and I was crying and it was just really bad. And then I remember when you brought up kindergarten, I remember your first day of kindergarten because I was pretty
Mhm.
devastated that I couldn't be there. Being in the army, I had limited availability to leave.
Yeah.
And so I remember talking to your mom because that first day of kindergarten, I don't know if you remember this,
I had to
but
ride the bus.
you rode the bus,
Yeah.
but you didn't get off at the right stop.
Yep. No, the
And
bus
I
driver had to drive
remember
me to my house.
your mom, and I'm not saying this to be mean to your mom. I mean, we're fine now and Stan's a great guy and whatnot, but she didn't go to pick you up.
Mhm.
And she was just sitting at home watching TV. And here I am, and it's not all about me, but I'm sitting in this other state just crushed because I can't be there on my first child's first day of kindergarten. And then I found out you got off at the wrong stop, or you actually didn't get off at all. You went to the
No,
end of
I
the
didn't get
route,
off.
and the bus
Yeah.
driver's like, why is this kid still on the bus?
Mhm.
And you just adapt and you do what you got to do. And then, so you stayed in Arizona pretty much through high school,
Yeah.
Catalina Foothills. I moved there in 2002. So probably you would have been,
Second
what?
grade.
Yeah. So 2002, you were still young, you and your brother. And I moved to probably about 10 miles away, set up my practice in Tucson. And then you went there through high school. Pretty much around the sixth grade, though, you switched over from your mom's house to my
Mhm.
house. Me and
Yep.
my your stepmom Katie at the time. And do you remember that transition, moving over to our place?
I do. I remember I had wanted to move in with you like a year or two before, but I was told only I could go and not my
Mhm.
brother, which is not fair. So I waited. And then I remember for seventh grade, I got to move in with you guys.
Yeah,
And I remember being
and
really happy about that.
let's talk about then you being a difficult child.
Yeah, I was not
You were
very nice to my
so
mom.
Hannah went through the goth phase.
No, it was emo,
Emo
scene
phase.
kid.
Sorry. Well, I don't know the
Yeah.
difference. What's the difference between emo and goth, really?
I don't know. There's a South Park episode on it. You should watch.
But Hannah was an emo and wore
The
black.
tortured soul,
Yep,
as you called me.
she had two a parent and a step parent that were both doctors, but she had a miserable life.
Hmm.
Probably I'm guessing probably a lot of unresolved angst from the divorce and
Sure.
the move and everything, and then moving in with me and having separate parents. I mean that's tough. But what was funny about it was you called yourself a shadow child. Do you remember the shadow children?
No,
Okay, so
no.
Catalina Foothills had this group of kids that at lunchtime would go out and
Oh
sit
my God, I do remember.
behind this wall, and the wall cast a shadow. So they
Yeah.
called themselves the Shadow Children, which
Hmm.
to this day just cracks me up. Um, but we still have pictures of the emo phase, and it's
Oh
like
yeah.
remember you had the concert T-shirts, Good Charlotte, Escape the Fate, Bring Me the Horizon, which are
Hmm.
actually kind of some of those songs on my phone.
I know. That's
But
hilarious.
remember, I can't remember what birthday it was. You and I went to Denver for one of your
I think
birthdays,
I think it was my 15th birthday.
and we saw Escape the Fate,
Yeah.
Attack Attack,
And William Control.
William Control, and
Hmm.
so you're up there doing your thing, and there was a second story, and I go up to the second story because I'm just kind of like the oldest person there, and it was this little bar kind of scene. And I remember thinking, I gotta buy a hoodie or something so I can just cover up. And So I buy this hoodie and I go upstairs and everybody's like, I cinched the thing up around my face, and and these people are like, yeah, dude, and I'm just thinking they're just doing that because I'm old. At the time I was probably 31, 40 or 41. And I look down at the hoodie and it just says fuck in like in big letters. This hoodie,
Yeah,
I
right
zipped it up.
across the
It
front.
says fuck. And I'm just like, I wish I still had it actually. I don't know what I did with it, but I still wish I had that. But anyways, a great, at the time I thought it was kind of odd because that music was kind of weird, but William Control, even though the guy's kind of a Looney Tunes, the music was pretty good, and Escape
Hmm.
the Fate was pretty good. Now, do you still listen to that kind of stuff, or did you move
I
on?
do. No, I have my little Spotify playlist. That's all my good old punk. I just saw Blink 182. The tickets you got
I mean,
me.
I don't look at them as being in the same genre, though.
No, they're not like hardcore. But yeah, no, I still listen to that stuff. I still listen to Escape the Fate. Friends and Alibis is one of my favorite songs. I
I
was
think of
jamming to
those
some
bands as being
Breaking
like
Benjamin.
those bands that are like jaw 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 jaw
Yeah, they're
jaw.
screamo. They're
Yeah, like
screamo for
where they're
sure.
sucking in, like it's like or words that you can't understand. But actually, some of those bands now have actually gone a little more mainstream. Like,
Hmm.
I think Bring Me the Horizon is probably a little more mainstream now.
Yeah, they're more chill now.
So that's pretty cool. So what have you moved? Well, then you went through your phase of EDM
Yes, I did.
and Bass Nectar, and we got the
Yeah,
tattoo. And I remember
yeah,
one of your
yeah.
Christmas presents was going to Vegas to one of
EDC.
those EDC concerts.
Yeah.
And so let's divulge here because we never really got into this. When you go to
Hmm.
these concerts, are you doing Molly or what are you doing?
Back then, when I was in
Yeah.
college, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
So you got all the lights and you got the fancy pants and the the fake hats that you look like a furry or something like
Oh
that.
my, yes. Uh-huh.
And then you do your Molly and
Hmm.
what is that experience? Because I've never obviously done that. What's that like?
So I want to preface this by saying the drugs I was doing then are much different than what's available now.
How's
And
that?
if you chew, I feel like the quality fentanyl wasn't really a thing.
Oh
So I
yeah,
was
no, yeah.
never really like
So you're
scared
saying that
of
right
doing.
now fentanyl is a problem in the
Yes,
community.
I
Yeah.
would not do drugs currently. I mean, I haven't probably since like I was 25, so almost 5 years ago.
Well,
But
you'll do marijuana, but that's legal in
I
Colorado.
do marijuana and I take
Mushrooms.
mushrooms, but I don't
But
do
those are
any of
legal
like
too.
lab grown. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would just like preface this by saying if you're doing these things, please test your drugs because you don't
Right.
know what's in
But
them.
like, so
But
you would go
anyway,
to these EDC concerts and people would just be handing this stuff out or something.
no, God no. Well, I
Oh,
mean
okay.
there were, but if you're smart, you don't take drugs from strangers.
Right.
So, you buy them and sneak them in, but it's very euphoric in like the best way.
Hmm.
Like you're still very lucid. It's not the same kind of like trip as like acid would be where you're kind of out of your mind in a sense, but you're very like lucid. They
Hmm.
release a ton of dopamine.
Hmm.
So you just feel very like you're super happy, you love everybody. It gives you, I mean, it has amphetamines in it, so you have a bunch of energy. Like it's really fun. Not I'm not
Yeah.
encouraging anyone, but it is really
No.
fun. Yeah.
So, but that's the thing is like a lot of people now will talk about, there's a lot of 30 somethings and 40 somethings going down to, Costa Rica or whatever to do ayahuasca
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
do all these other trips. And I think that there is this need in our culture to get outside yourself and
Yeah.
experience this euphoria because, you know, jobs suck and I mean I just find that how do you how do you think you got through that without becoming like addicted to stuff, because it does feel good.
Yeah. I just think that like I just don't have that personality. Like,
Mhm.
I don't really drink as an adult anyway. And I just feel like for me, I always know when there's that line to like stop.
Mhm.
There's also drugs that I would never try, because there's
Mhm.
things you shouldn't ever try. I just feel like mentally I know that I don't need these things and I know they're for recreational purposes, so it's easy. But I also feel like I don't have, like I said, that addictive personality. I don't have the desire to try certain things. So it's easy to be like, okay, well, that was fun, but I'm good now, you know?
Do you have friends that are addicted to things?
Yeah, I have friends that were previously addicted to things like heroin,
Mm.
cocaine. I don't really hang out with people now that do or are addicted to those things. But yeah, I've definitely have friends and exes that
Mm.
were into those things for sure.
So you go from high school to Denver. We both went to the same place, Regis College, Regis University in Denver.
Hmm.
We had different experiences. I mean, I pretty much lived on campus 3.5 years. You lived on campus once a year, but even when you lived there, I think you were still off campus most of the time with
Hmm.
friends.
Yeah.
You had a different friend subset, and I think we butted heads a little bit because I wanted you to have that kind of experience that I had where you got
Hmm.
friends. Like I'm still friends with my college roommate Craig. He lives in San Antonio. And and you just had a different path. You kind of always had a bit of a different path. And
Yeah.
we had a rough go when you were in high school. It was
Hmm.
rough. I mean, you know, not maybe not more than anybody else, but all I have is our relationship because I only have 4 kids. But you pushed the limits. And as the firstborn, usually the firstborn is like the perfectionist, straight A's, keeps the nose to the grindstone. And you just, not that you didn't do that to a certain degree, but you pushed limits in other ways. You went
Yeah.
emo, you did drugs a little bit here and there, nothing crazy. But you brought, we caught marijuana in the house one time. And it was a different time for me. I think I was definitely not the person that I am today. And there was a couple of runs where I probably told you to get out, and your stepmom stepped in and interfered with that, luckily. And
Hmm.
you've turned out pretty fantastic. So I would say, the kids, you guys need to find your own way. And
Yeah.
as a parent, you try to push them in certain directions. And with you, the pushing, I think, just didn't work. You just were a
Mm-mm.
different mindset. You had to
I'm
figure
pretty
shit out.
stubborn.
Yeah. You had to figure stuff out for yourself. And so college for you, you majored in Spanish.
Sociol No, I majored in sociology. I minored in Spanish and
Okay.
anthropology.
Are you still fluent, do you think, in Spanish?
I don't think I'm as fluent as I was because, when I was in college, I had just lived in Honduras.
Hmm.
I was dating a Mexican guy
Hmm.
and I took every single Spanish class Regis offered. So I was like in it a lot
Yeah.
more. Now I use it at work, but
Right.
I don't use it as frequently. But I would still say that I'm not totally fluent, but I'm like 80-90% there.
So you're conversational.
Yeah, oh yeah, I could have a conversation, no problem.
So you go to Regis, and then you decided to stay in Denver.
Mhm. Yeah.
What was your first job out of college?
Well, I've just worked in restaurants, but it was
Was it Maggiano's?
Maggiano's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I worked at Gumbo's in college,
Oh,
Maggiano's
that's
in
right.
college, and then when I graduated, I was still there.
So you started out as a server
Mhm.
and did that for how many? 3, 4 years?
I worked at Maggiano's for about 4 years, yeah.
And that's where you met your ex-husband.
Mhm.
And you dated him for a while, and then y'all got married for a year. And like I
Yep.
said, none of this stuff is I asked ahead of time, but you got divorced, what, a year
Mhm.
later because he had
13 months, yeah.
substance issues,
Yep.
which you kind of knew he'd had a history, with DUIs and whatnot.
Yeah.
Nice guy, but I remember him asking me. Remember, he wanted to have dinner with me because he wanted to
Mhm.
ask you to marry him. And he asked me for advice. And I remember saying to the guy, you have to not be a piece of toast because
Yeah.
Hannah will steamroll you.
I
And
will.
and and you're literally a piece of toast. So you have to learn how to stand up for yourself and be kind of the guy,
Yeah.
or she's not going to respect you. Now, at the time, I didn't have a talk with him about substances because I figured he was fine. But
Yeah.
what was okay? So you come from divorced family and you have that history. What was it like for you to go through the process? I mean, you seemed to be pretty good through it because you had a
Honestly,
reason.
I for me, I'm not going to do anything that makes me unhappy. I'm not going to stay in a situation that makes me unhappy. And I was miserable, like
Mhm.
miserable. So for
Like
me,
from day one or what? Because
no,
okay,
everything was fine, but it was like I mean, he had issues like throughout the relationship, but
right.
nothing like severe, or else, I never would have gone through with getting married. But it like literally we signed the the marriage license, and like 3 weeks later shit hit the fan. Like
Mm.
it was like a flip switched. I don't know if it gave him like this false
Because you guys had
sense
been
of
dating for a
security,
few years prior to the marriage.
like five.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
was just like
So I
all of a
don't
sudden,
know.
he just kept
Yeah,
that
I
up
mean, like
for
I said,
5
there
years.
were things here and there, but it was like once we signed the papers, it was like game over.
Mm.
Um, but I just am the type of person who I'm not going to do anything I don't want to do. That's just my personality and that's who I am. And I just don't believe in doing things for the sake of appearances.
Mm.
And once it just got worse and I laid out all the options, and I got shit on like 4 times. And eventually I was like, I'm not a doormat. I'm not going to keep being walked on. Like, this is done. So I did everything. I filled out all of the divorce paperwork on my
Mm.
own for both of us.
Mm.
I took it to the courthouse. All I needed from him were signatures. I did literally everything. So, luckily, I have a couple regulars at work who are lawyers who I could ask questions
Mm.
to, because I didn't want to pay for a lawyer because that's like 3 grand. And Colorado is nice. If you haven't been married for more than 36 months, you're legally not entitled to financial
Mm.
compensation,
Mm.
which is good because I make more money than him. So, and we don't own any assets together. The only asset is our dog, which when we got the dog, I'm the one on his contract. So
Mm.
legally he belongs to me. But I also think that he wasn't dumb enough to try to fight me on it, because I would have thrown everything I had
I
into
have
that.
never heard. Are there people that have custody battles over dogs?
Yes, 100%. I feel like a lot of it's just to be petty.
I can't even imagine that because just what do? You put the dog in the middle and you both call him and then see who he goes to? I
I
mean,
don't
it's
know.
like, what would that be? I
Yeah.
mean, who would argue over a dog? I know people that do have
Some
like
people, because they're
visitation, like
well,
they're
see,
like
that's
one
dumb.
week.
I'm not doing that. No,
But
that's
yeah,
too much. It's a dog.
has he ever asked to see the dog?
Oh, all the time.
Really? Even
All the
now?
time. Yes.
Oh
And
wow.
I say no.
And you're like, nah.
Yeah. I'm like, no, I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, it just like keeps the string between the two of us. And I already have to see him at work.
Yeah, that's
So
true. Yeah, we
I
didn't
have,
mention that. You still work together.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I just have no interest in seeing him outside of that building.
So you're pretty good at just kind of like cutting, just like you separate things and then you move on.
Well, it's like I said, like, this wasn't like a spur of the moment decision. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
shit had been bad for a while. And so it was, the tie had been cut a long time ago. This was just dealing with all of the legal aspects of everything. So, and I'm a very like, I'll give you opportunities, but if you walk all over me, I'm gonna cut the cord, because it's not worth my mental health to be treated that way.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm not even 30. Like, I'm not gonna live the rest of my
oh
life in
man, but
misery.
you're so close. You're
So
so
close.
close to 30. So I'll tell you what, 30's fine. I had a problem. I had more of a problem with 40 than I did with 50 for some reason. 30, I don't remember being. I mean, are you feeling like 30 is going to be like a big deal or like
No,
you won't be
I
able to
don't. I
say you're
mean,
20 something anymore?
no. You know me, age, I don't really care about age. Like, that's not really a thing to me. Like, I don't, it's like, what's 30 different? I mean, yeah, I'm more mature than I was 5 years ago, and my body feels a little bit older, but mentally, I don't really see the big deal. 30's not old, you know?
Okay, so I want to tell everybody, Hannah has always been a little, well, not a little, you're pretty liberal. Um,
I
compared
don't know
to,
about so much anymore,
well, no,
but
we're going to talk about that, but she was definitely very liberal, like women, women's rights and all that great.
yeah,
But and I think, you lived in a family where we're fairly maybe a
yeah,
moderate, maybe a little more right moderate, but not like super conservative because
yeah, but
being
we
a
don't really talk
gynecologist,
about politics
well, we
in
do
the
now at
family.
Thanksgiving, and I think your brothers are, and we'll talk to them in a few weeks, but they're also maybe a little conservative, maybe a little more right-sided. You were definitely the lone lefty in the
Yeah.
house and not just left, but you were pretty left, like far left.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and so okay, so you get divorced. Now, let's talk about the months after your divorce, which was kind of
Sure.
like I think probably the only time in our relationship where you didn't really you shared with the divorce, you then also got pregnant. Okay.
I did.
Yeah. So Hannah got pregnant and she said, we can talk about this. She got an abortion. And actually that was in a way for us, it was a really good moment because you were very open with me and we talked about it. Obviously as a
Mhm.
GYN, um, we talked about it and you're very, very supportive of obviously a
Yes.
woman's right to choose. And
Absolutely.
but here's the thing. I was worried about you because you made that decision pretty like you just yeah,
Fast.
yeah, you made it fast. You knew you didn't want to get pregnant. It was a mistake. Um, and I was worried because there was almost like no real emotional response. And then about
Yeah.
2 days afterwards, you called me at like midnight one night and you were just crying. And
Mhm.
I was very relieved because that was the response that I think had just not, you hadn't, do you remember like what happened that, like what got you to that
Well,
point?
so I feel like the reason why everything was so rushed was because after a certain amount of time, you can't take the pill. You have to have a
Right.
DNC,
Yep.
and I just didn't wanna do that because that's a whole medical
So you were
procedure,
where
and
around 8 weeks, 6 weeks?
no, I was when I had it, I was, like, 9.
So they made you like do the heartbeat and everything, look at
Yes.
it,
Oh,
look
yeah,
at
I
it.
had to
Okay.
have an old well, I didn't have to look at they didn't force me to show
Okay.
me anything. I
But you
had to
did.
get one, but I didn't I did look at it.
Yeah.
They offered me a picture,
Hmm.
which I chose not to take, but now I kinda wish that I had.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I felt like because I think it was after 11 weeks, you have to do the DNC, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't wanna do that, so I just felt, like, very rushed to make a decision. In retrospect, I wish I had more time to
Mm-hmm.
actually, like, sit and think about it because Danny and
Mm-hmm.
I did talk about it, but not as, like, in depth as I
Mm-hmm.
wish we had been able to talk about it, and
Do you
Danny is
think the
very
outcome would have
much
been different?
no, I think that, like, time and place still wasn't right,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I definitely think about it a lot. It definitely affected me a lot more than I thought it would.
Yeah. Well, that's normal,
That's
I
for
think.
sure.
Yeah, that's normal.
Um, I guess it kinda, like I've never wanted kids, it's never really been my thing, but I've
Right.
also never really had a partner who I feel like I could see having kids with.
Mm-hmm.
With Danny, I do feel like if we chose to, it would be a really great relationship to raise a kid in, but I still, like I financially don't think I could afford to have a kid. It's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of stress. I don't think I could live the life that I currently live as far as like what I do in my free time. I
Mm-hmm.
have 3
Okay.
dogs. So, like the idea I think about it, I'm like, "Oh, it might be nice to have a kid," but then I just think about everything else and I'm like, I just don't think my life is suited for that.
So do you find that people judge you because of that decision? Like, do you feel like when people ask you and you say, I don't want kids, that they're like, why?
Yes. Oh, 100%. People are always like, you'll change your mind. What do you mean?"
Mm,
And I'm like, I feel like if I was in a different financial situation or lived in a city where I had family that could watch a child for me, I could
Mm,
consider it, but that's just not, and like I said, all the my hobbies I do outside of work aren't super like baby friendly. So I just don't think it's right for me in my lifestyle. But I do think everyone, your life is supposed to be you go to college, you get married, you start a family, whatever. But I just, and so like that's so ingrained in people's brain that that's what you're supposed to do. And so
mhm,
people are always like, why don't you have kids? I'm like, I just don't want kids. They're like, you will eventually. I'm like,
mm,
no, I just, and my husband is also significantly older than me. So the thought for him, he's like, I don't want to have a kid when I'm 50,
mhm.
you know? So he's like, I'll be 100 when like I won't even see them like live, you know? So
Yeah.
I think too, it's just not my path.
Yeah, it's funny because your youngest brother, he's already got it mapped out. He's like
Oh yeah.
26, I'm going to get married, I'm going to be 26, I'm going to have kids. I mean, so it's really interesting how people even growing up in the same house can have different concepts of what they want. And so, but, and you talked about money, but I mean, right now you're a bartender at a pretty
Mm-hmm.
nice, high end kind of steakhouse, and you're making pretty darn good money. I mean, I was making $27,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably making at least four times that. So I think, the money thing is, you know, you can make it work. Um,
Yeah.
you
But I
guys
also
are,
don't want to do that.
yeah. So, and that's fine. I think that's the main thing is you just don't want to. And that's a good enough reason. I think people make you feel like you need to have all these reasons,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you say the reasons, that are your reasons, then they're like, oh, well, like I just did. Well, you make enough money, or, you're just going camping and dogs are fine. Dogs love babies, and they give you all these
Mm-hmm.
reasons again. And it's like, well, I gave you my reasons, asshole.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
if that doesn't work for you, I'm sorry. All right. So you were a lefty. Now you got an abortion, which is also kind of in that genre. But then
Mm-hmm.
you're with this guy, you married Danny, who is about what, 14, 15 years older than you. And
18.
he's a retired park ranger. So
No, retired game warden.
game warden. Okay. I was close. Um, and you now are a gun advocate,
Mm-hmm.
which your brothers and I are always like. I remember I told you, I was thinking about buying a gun, and within
Yeah.
like 3 minutes, I had all these text pictures of guns I should get. And you're like, nah, don't get the Glock 19 or whatever. You're giving me all this advice. And I was like, who the hell is this child? Because now it's like, how do you have this kind of left leaning view of life, and yet now you're kind of like a gun owner?
I just feel like when you're 18 to 23, you're not like a real adult.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I went to a very liberal college.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my degree is very liberal. So it's easy to kind of get, I don't want to say stuck in that, but if that's all you're exposed to, that's kind of all you see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's easy to like be in that mindset, but then being with someone that's had a very different experience and now as an almost 30-year-old, really like taxes really affect me
Mm-hmm.
and like inflation really affects me and things like that, some liberal values I just don't really agree with anymore. And as far as the like gun stuff, like as a woman, I feel personal protection is very important.
Yeah,
So I
why don't
do
you tell
carry.
everybody what your little scare episode was a few weeks back?
So long story short, I noticed I was on the phone with my mom. I was in Walmart on a nice side of town. I was in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, like not scary place to be. And it was like 6:30 in the afternoon, sunny outside. I was just doing some errands to prepare for a camping trip I was about to go on. I'm on the phone with my mom. I kind of noticed this weird, like crackhead looking guy following me around. And I'm like, it's a grocery store. He's not following me. I go to the complete opposite side of the store and I get off the phone because I still have this weird feeling. And I'm coming down an aisle And this guy, the crackhead guy, is going down the aisle, and we make eye contact, and I just got like this bad, bad, bad feeling in my stomach. So I was like, I need to get out of here. So I leave the store. He's following me. So I start to pick up the pace. I get into my truck, close the door. He's running towards me. So I back out like a bat out of hell and get out of that parking lot. And I noticed that the guy who was following me, there was a big like Ford F-250, like 4 spaces down and a row up from me. He got into the back seat with like 3 other men, and I just knew that they were going to abduct me. Like,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, it was that I called the sheriff's department and reported it. By the time they got there, they were gone. But, I had a machete in my car, but I didn't have anything on my person. And
I would
you
like to
can,
have seen you spin around with the
I
machete.
know,
That
I
would have
know.
been awesome.
And in Colorado, you can open carry, but if a store has a sign posted, you can't. So I opted to get my concealed carry permit, which now, if I run errands alone, I do carry my 9mm with me.
So I guess my question would be, let's say this same scenario happened. What would you do differently? Would you still try to get out of the situation?
Oh, 100%.
Just
Yeah, I
turn
mean,
around and aim the gun at him? I mean, what do you
no, hell,
do?
no, absolutely not. No, no. I mean, part of the concealed carry is you have to be a responsible firearms owner. Um, in the state of Colorado, if you feel as though your life is in danger and threatened, legally, you can take action to protect yourself, lethal force. But you have to have a good reason. I
Mhm.
don't think someone following you to your car, had they grabbed me,
Mm.
absolutely, I would have been within my right to shoot them. Had he tried to get in, had he opened the door to my vehicle, absolutely. But if he was following me, no. But it does give you that sense of protection where if shit starts to go down the drain, I can at least protect myself. But
So
on that same time,
you know how to clean it, you know how to shoot it, you know how to
mhm,
load it. You don't
yep,
feel I always felt like it would be kind of good for kids to know how to respond around a gun. Like if you're at a party and someone's got a gun, how to get the bullets out of it,
yeah. They
how to
actually tell you that the more educated a child is about a firearm, the least likely they are to hurt themselves with a
mm,
firearm,
or someone else like
or
accidentally.
someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, being as my husband's a retired law enforcement, he obviously knows how to use weapons. He's a trainer for the NRA on gun safety, firearm safety. So he's taught me all of the things. So I
I
feel
think the thing
safe.
that's fascinating, and you mentioned this, when you're younger and you're more idealistic,
Mhm.
it is easier to be more left leaning because it is
Mhm.
an idealistic view of life. And
It
then as you
is.
age, and we had this conversation last year, you called me and you're like, Dad, I owe like $6,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
And I was like, welcome to the world there, kiddo. And all I said was, did you do it yourself? And you said, yes. And I said, why don't you just hire somebody? Just spend a few $100, go hire an actual CPA. And then you called me back and you were like, oh, I don't know anything.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, well, see, and that's what you realize is that the people that make higher incomes have more tax benefits that you may not even
Mhm.
know about, and you got to hire people to do that. But I thought that was also a kind of an interesting life lesson when you finally get this job and you're a bartender. So you get a lot of tips and stuff that you might
Yeah.
not pay taxes on right away. And then you report it and you're like, holy crap. And the CPAs are always like, oh, congratulations. That just means you made more money. And I'm like, screw that.
Mhm.
I don't mind paying taxes if I knew where the hell the money went. Right.
Yeah, right.
So when they tell me, "Oh, you owe an extra $30,000," I mean, that's great, but why can't I just give it to the people that are homeless in Austin rather than you sending it to Ukraine or something where I don't even have any
Mhm.
clue where it's freaking going? And I think that's an interesting life lesson too is that when it doesn't change your mind until it affects you. And you mentioned that. You live in a city that's expensive. Austin's
Yeah.
very similar. I'm I've been divorced 5 years. And I'm a doctor, and I still find the prices to be somewhat outrageous. I'll go to, granted it's Whole Foods, but I'll go to Whole Foods and one bag of groceries is like $120. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
insane. And I don't know how a family with 4 kids, a single mom, I employ people that they probably make $25 an hour, and they're struggling. I was talking to one of the girls yesterday. She's $25 an hour. She's got 2 kids, and her apartment is $1,800, and she doesn't live in an expensive neighborhood. Between that and her groceries, she has like maybe a couple $100 left. So if her car,
Yeah.
she needed bearings on her car, and she's broke. I mean, and $25 an hour sounds like a lot of money. Certainly does to me when I'm paying it. I remember when I got my first job where I met your mom at Burger King. I think the minimum wage was $3.35 an hour.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and I thought I was rich, you know. So yeah, so okay, so you got remarried to Danny. You're a big outdoorsman all of a sudden, like
No, I don't want to say all of a sudden. I've always enjoyed hiking
hiking.
and
Yeah,
all of that, but
you're
I've
right.
gotten into hunting. So
Oh yeah,
yes.
hunting. Yeah, you went
Yeah.
pronghorn sheep hunting.
No.
That's
No,
coming.
that's next week. That's next
Okay.
week.
I just like
So
saying
far,
prong. It's not prong, it's
prong.
prong. Yeah, you just say prong.
Mm,
Going
okay.
hunting prong. So you just went, you didn't get anything for deer season, right? Or
Deer's
did
not
you?
till the end of the month.
Okay, but you got
So I
grouse.
went
You're just
turkey
hunting grouse
hunting.
hunting. Turkeys, that's right.
I got grouse. Yes, I got 2 of those. And we went dove hunting and I got some of those too.
So the grouse, I used to hunt pheasant. I never hunted grouse, but quail and stuff, when they take off, it like scares the crap out of you. They're loud. Grouse, do
Good.
they thump
No, they're
like
so stupid.
there's grouse that like when they pat their wings on the ground and they make noises. Can you hear them or how do you hunt them?
Well, we were on the ATV
Oh, okay.
and we were riding around the mountains and I saw some birds run across the trail. So
Oh.
I was like, I thought they were grouse. So we slammed on the brakes and we get off and I've got my 17 HMR and we're walking through the woods
Oh
and
yeah,
they're
everybody's
on the
got a 17 HMR. I mean, we all got one of
well, it's
those.
not mine, it's Danny's, but we were and then it just like popped up on this tree stump and just stood perfectly still. So I'm like, well, that's easy. So you load one and I got it. And that was the first thing that I had spotted and shot. So I was really proud of myself for that. And then we throw it in the cooler, get back on the ATV. We go up. Danny sees some grouse. So we go up to this hill, and one was like just right there. I got a second one. And then Danny's kind because he could get them before I get them, but he lets me try. And then he got one too.
So, and then you just posted a picture, I think yesterday or today, with the cooked grouse.
Yeah.
Basically, it just looked like a chicken to me.
Yeah. They're about like a Cornish hen.
Now, when you're eating them, are you spitting out buckshot and feathers, or?
No, so the 17 is like a 22 bullet, so it's
Oh,
small.
okay.
So
Oh, so
it just goes
it's
right
not a
through.
buckshot. It's actually one bullet.
So a buckshot, you would destroy a bird. You use that on a deer. Bird shot is what we used for the quail. I mean, not the quail, I'm sorry, for the dove. But yeah, I just used a rifle, so it's one bullet.
Oh,
So I shot it in both of them in the neck, so it just goes right through.
man, you're hardcore. And then we have a little family chat, and you're posting all these pictures, and your brothers are giving you a hard time.
Oh, no one ever pays attention to me when I send pictures, but it's fine.
Well, you got to get in the group text where they're sharing the sizes of their poops, and then I think you'll get a lot
I
of.
was in that group text and I left it, so
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
good on
say
that one.
if you got on, I just tell you one time, if you just got on there and posted a really big poop,
I'm not gonna do that, but
you would be legendary. You would be
no,
legendary. You would live in infamy.
I'm good.
Last thing I want to talk about with you, and something that I'm sure you're really proud of, is that you've lost how much? 53 pounds.
Yeah, 53.
And I want to bring this up because you used tirzepatide or Monjaro,
Mhm.
and I'm a big advocate of those medications because I think they work and they change lives. There's a lot of negativity on the internet about those medications because people think, oh, you're overweight. You're obviously just not dieting. You're not eating right, blah, blah, blah. And maybe to a certain extent, some of that is true. But you did a lot of CrossFit for a long time and you did lose a little bit of weight,
Mhm.
probably 20 pounds or so, and you felt good. But how has this medication changed your life, do you feel?
It's definitely changed my life in a lot of like real ways, but also some superficial ways as
Mhm.
well. like weight wise, I feel a lot better. Like my clothes, I have to buy new clothes, which is like a really great, I'm buying new
Yeah.
clothes because they don't fit because
Right.
I'm too skinny now, which is a
Yeah.
great feeling. Um, I notice when Danny and I go hiking, it's a lot easier for me. I'm not
53
breathing as
pounds. You should
hard.
strap on a 50-pound backpack and just
I
try to go
know,
hiking. It would be tough.
right?
Yeah.
That's what one of my dogs weighs. But yeah, I just feel like mentally I feel a lot better. Um, it's nice to not just feel like shit, you know? Like I was just eating bad foods for one, lots of sweets. Um, I just didn't feel good. Like my body hurt all the time, and I feel like it's not as bad now that I don't have all that excess weight on me.
Were you depressed a
Um,
little bit? Do you feel like your mood is better or?
I definitely think the beginning of the year was really rough for me because of the abortion and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think I gained more weight because I was eating more because I was
Yeah,
depressed. So
sure.
I definitely feel like in a lot better mental headspace now for sure. I'm sure some of that is like attributed because of the weight loss, but superficially, I've noticed, you know, as a bartender, people are looking at me all day long. And one of the girls I work with is like Barbie. She's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So people would always mention like, isn't Mick just so pretty? Isn't she this? And she is very beautiful. And
They would say
she's
that to
very,
you?
oh yeah. And she's a very down to earth person. So
Yeah,
like I could tell it was awkward for her that
yeah,
people, I mean, that would be awkward for anybody, but it's interesting. Like now that I've lost, and she did semaglutide because
right.
she lost about the same amount of weight as I did. But I've noticed that since I've lost all this weight, my bar guests are so much nicer to me, which is
So,
fucked up.
so you feel people treat
But
you different.
oh, so much different. Like before, I feel like women especially were very like argumentative with me
Hmm.
about things or just like not very nice, and the men, it was our clientele is a lot older men, and they were just like wouldn't pay attention to me or like would be like, I don't know, just like not very nice and wouldn't really give you the time of day, you know. And I feel like since I've lost all this weight, my tips are a lot better, which is weird because
I
my
see.
service hasn't changed at all.
Yeah.
Guests just happen to be a lot nicer to me, especially if I like make a mistake at
Mm.
doing something, like if I ring something in wrong or whatever. People are so nice. Like it's the weirdest thing ever.
Has it made you more aware of how you treat people that might be overweight? Like, because I think that's a natural response. They've done studies. Prettier people are treated different. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just, you respond to them different. And I think as a doctor, especially a GYN, I get women in all stages, and I'm always checking myself on that because I'm always wanting to treat everybody the same,
Mhm.
and not that I'm argumentative or anything, but that I'm not like more talkative or something. I want to give everybody the same kind of service, but we are drawn more to people that are
Yeah.
more naturally attractive, and it's something that you need to be aware of. And I think it's really fascinating that you notice your tips have gone up. That's really interesting.
But I will say too, what's also on the same side of the token, like weight loss is such a weird thing because it's like people can lose weight or gain weight for so many reasons. Eating disorders exist, you know, whatever. But I've noticed that a lot of people that I work with who see me daily, it's mostly the people that work in the kitchen are like, "Are you okay? Are you
Mm,
sick? Like, why are you losing so much weight? Like, you need to eat." And it's always so fascinating to me, like all the other servers and stuff, and are like, or my manager was just gone for 4 months or 4 weeks, and he came
mm,
back and he's like, "Wow, you look so different. Like, you look great." But it's all the bussers and chefs are like, "Do you
hmm.
need food? Are you hungry? Are you eating?"
Yeah,
And it's just so weird because it's like, why? First of all, why would that ever be an appropriate comment to make to someone? Because what if I had an eating disorder or something? Like, that's not cool. But weight is such a weird thing
yeah,
because you shouldn't really comment on it. It does feel good when people tell me I look skinny. Like, I love hearing that because I've
mm,
never heard that my entire life.
same.
So it is nice to hear that. But it's also at the same time, like, some people have been like concerned. I'm like, I don't even think I'm that skinny right now either,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, what's
Like, I
funny
don't,
is when you're fat, when you've been overweight, like I go up and down all the time. I was a fat kid, and when my parents got divorced, I got fat. And I always struggled with that. And I'm really not good with compliments, never have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably the worst. I probably tell myself all the time how horrible I am. I still have a hard time seeing myself as thin because
Yeah.
I don't see that. Now, like I was wearing pants the other day and they felt tight and I was like, "Oh, you fat." So, whatever. And then I realized my pants are 31. I used to be a 36. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm 5 inches smaller, but you just like you said, I love going out and buying clothes and whereas I used to hate like walking by mirrors before. And it really changes your view on life and health. It's good for your health. So kudos to you. I know I don't want to keep you too much longer. So I wanted to just close with how do you feel it is right now being 30-ish and living in the country that we're in today? I mean, do you feel optimistic, pessimistic? What things are important to you right now that maybe weren't important when you were younger?
I've never been like a super pro America person. Like I'm
Uh-huh.
glad I live here and I'm glad I've had the opportunities I've had here, but I think our country is, for lack of a better word, pretty fucked up.
Hmm.
Um, Especially with the government we have now. Like they don't care about us. It's all money.
Hmm.
Everything's money. Money rules everything. And I'm not a millionaire or a billionaire. So Danny and I talk all the time, like how nice it would be to move to Alaska and live off grid and not have to deal with the daily pressures of society. And neither of us really care about having material things. We'd rather just have each other, our dogs, and live outside, you know?
Hmm.
Um, I don't feel great about where our country's going. I feel like gonna, I think we're in a recession, but I think it's just gonna get worse. I think people are going to get more desperate. Like crime in Denver has gotten out of control. Luckily,
Hmm.
on my side of town, I don't really see it, but homelessness is insane, and it all really stems from COVID. Like COVID ruined a lot of
Has
things.
Denver defunded the police?
To a degree, but not
Yeah.
severely the way other
Well, okay,
places
let's say
have.
it comes down to next year. It's in November, and and I know you're not going to vote for Trump, but we got
No,
Trump and Biden.
I
Um,
just don't think I would vote, to be
I
honest with
can't.
you,
Well, that's kind of where I'm at, and
because
I put in a group chat that I kind of am looking at RFK Jr. and he
yeah,
may go libertarian because he can't even get on the ballot because of the way that it's all set up. It's so corrupt that
yeah,
you can't even get another person on the freaking ballot. And I'll tell you what, why do we have two people that are over
yeah,
almost 80 years old running the
yeah.
country? Come on. Do we not have younger people? I mean, what is it? I mean, is it your generation? Do you feel they're very political? Or I mean, your friends and do you talk about this
I think
stuff?
we are, but I also think that I just think the government doesn't give a fuck about you,
Mhm.
and the government isn't made for people like me. Like I think it's very important to vote in your local elections because that does affect you directly and you do have a say in your
Mm.
local elections. And so I do think it's very, very, very important to vote locally. But as far as like presidential elections, my vote doesn't matter. It does makes literally no difference
Now
in
you sound like
anything.
your grandpa.
Yeah.
He has been
But
saying that for decades.
it doesn't. It really doesn't. Like, it does not really matter if I vote or not. In presidential elections, I feel. And so I've just gotten to this point where none of these people really represent me either, especially as someone who has pretty strong liberal views on some things, but pretty strong conservative views on other things. It's like I don't really fit the mold for either option that we
Mhm.
have. And so it's just like I just feel like what's the point? I'm never going to vote for Trump. It's not happening.
Yeah.
And I would not vote for Joe Biden ever again because he's been at my life was better during Trump than it was during this presidency. So
Yep.
that's a hard pill to swallow as
Yep.
well.
I think a lot of
But
people are realizing that. Even though he's kind of psycho, it's like, well,
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean financially and economically my life was a lot more comfortable then than it was now. And so, like I said, that's a tough pill to swallow because I don't like the guy. But Joe Biden's also done literally nothing for me, and things are way worse. So it's like I wouldn't vote for him again either.
Well, I really appreciate you being honest and open. One of the things I say as a parent that I've figured out at this age is if you can raise your kids without injecting your own pathologies into them, then you've done a good job. I hope I haven't fucked you up too much.
Just
But
the right amount.
yeah, just the right amount of screwed up is always good. Um, Thanks for being the inaugural episode. I'm going to talk to your 27-year-old brother next, and he's quite a chatty person, so I hope it's
That'll be
so.
fun
Your
for you.
interview was like an hour. His will probably be like 4 minutes. Whenever he and I talk, it's like I hate talking on the phone too. So whenever he and I talk, it's literally the worst conversation ever.
Hmm.
But yeah. So thanks for kicking it off. This was great. I actually learned a lot about you. You look beautiful,
Thank
and
you.
those hair extensions are awesome. And
Making their money.
I'm gonna get some myself. I don't know if they
You
make them
should.
in. They should make them in gray. I could just be like, get a
They
mullet.
do.
Oh, well, there you
There you
go.
go.
So, thanks again. Love you, and
Love you.
I'll be in touch soon.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.